This is Rob Schneider on the Jimmy Dore Show. Let's see what commences when these two failed comedians get in the same room and start grifting to each other.
Good friend of mine, Andrew Doyle, brilliant comedian from England. And he has a book called The New Puritans. What he really talks about is talk about cancel culture in a way to kind of get to the historical perspective on it. Then that's what I have to do to keep sane. And it's real. It's another form of witch burning, but it's a form of burning now that's like.
Isn't it weird that conservatives are still using this cancel culture talking point when they have engaged in so much cancel culture as of late? Like, right-wingers cancel people for anything. Drop of a hat. Like, your face was on a beer can, canceled. You sold a beer can with that person's face on it, canceled. You didn't, I mean, basically just like the very act of not being a conservative is enough to get you canceled by conservatives. You know, like people on the left won't cancel you just for not being on the left. People who are liberal will not cancel you just for not being liberal. But conservatives will literally cancel you just for not being conservative. So the idea that they're still going around bitching about cancel culture is insane. And really what it is, in the case of Rob Schneider, is just sour grapes that he doesn't get A-list starring movie roles anymore. But let's remember, Rob Schneider never lost those roles because of cancel culture. He lost those roles because eventually people realized he was a one-trick pony and his movies stopped making money and no one really wanted to see him anymore. So he organically failed, which, you know, hey, look, not everyone is meant for A-lister stardom. Rob Schneider still has a successful stand-up comedy career. He can still go out there. He can still fill some clubs. He can still do the "you can do it," and people will still show up to hear him do his set. So good for him. He's not a total failure. He hasn't fallen to like total destitution and despair, but there was a time when he was starring in A-list blockbuster comedies, right? Movies that made tens of millions of dollars at the box office. That was a very short period of time in his career, but it was a period of time in his career. That period of time is over. The American public, for the most part, grew tired of him, weren't willing to pay the ticket price to see his antics, okay? So he wasn't canceled. But now, because this quote-unquote cancel culture thing has come along, he wants to rewrite history where instead of just being a hack comic that was big for a hot minute and then had his 5 minutes of fame and now he's just, you know, a B-lister or whatever, B or C list celebrity, instead of running with that narrative, he's now running with the narrative like, I was huge, but I was canceled. Even if he's not directly saying here, I was canceled, him talking about cancel culture as this plague and being very serious about it kind of like lends credence to the idea to someone who doesn't really have the ability to like critically look at this situation. Like someone who's just like a very casual outside observer who doesn't know much about Rob Schneider or what his career was. It leads them to the conclusion of like, oh, this guy was canceled for being a conservative, which he wasn't. No one gives a if he's conservative or not. There's actually plenty of conservatives in Hollywood that are A-list stars. They just, you know, they don't go around spewing their politics everywhere necessarily. Like his friend Adam Sandler, who was, and remains a huge freaking star, is a right-winger. He's at least a moderate conservative. But, you know, he still continues to make money and he still continues to get work because people still have a demand to see Adam Sandler. I personally don't, but a lot of people do. Not as many people have, you know, have any sort of demand for Rob Schneider. So that's why his career is in the toilet. It's not because he's right-wing. It's because there's just not much organic interest in the guy.
Social media burning and canceling.
And I shouldn't say his career's in the toilet. That's unfair, you know, but, you know, he's not some mainstream star anymore.
It's the same stuff. It's the same, this puritanical thing. This is a purity lesson that you're never going to be able to hit. And anybody who falls from that or dares question it, they burn at the stake of social media. And that's really where we're at. And what happened with...
No, it's really not where we're at. Because there's plenty of, the contingency of people who are like, cancel culture is stupid, all this woke bull. That contingent is at least as large as the woke cancel mob contingent. For everybody who gets quote unquote canceled, there's plenty of people who remain firmly affixed to their side. If you're going to talk about, like, there's a few celebrities who I think were like legitimately canceled in an unfair way for stuff that I think was like way over the top. Like, Roseanne, for instance. I think Roseanne's cancellation was probably an overreaction. The chick from the Star Wars show, I think her cancellation was probably an overreaction. Now, that's not to say I don't see why they were canceled. That's not to say I don't see what was like the problem with what they said or anything. But I think it was an overreaction to remove them from the Disney show, remove them from the sitcom that they were the star of. I think that is, especially when it's the #1 sitcom on television, granted in an era where sitcoms are not nearly as popular as they once were. But like, other than those two, I think most of the time when people have been canceled, it's been because they were like rapists and shit. So, you can't, Rob Schneider going out there acting like, oh, this is just a big purity test and no one could live up to these standards. And if you even question it, you're just instantly destroyed. Like, no, not really. There have been a few examples where the mob like got out of hand and went too far with it, and I've made my position clear on that. But like, this is not some sort of insane thing that's just constantly happening and no one can even say the least little conservative idea anymore without being censored everywhere. Like, that's just not true.
With what happened with the decline in Christianity, and I'm a Christian. With the decline of this, you have a new religion, and it is a religion of scientism, and to believe in science and to not question it, and that is the new religion. And unfortunately, what happens is this medical establishment has become the new science, and if you question it,
this is so like illiterate and stupid. Basically saying science is a religion and you're not allowed to question science. Like, questioning science is built into science. Everything in science is just a hypothesis upgraded after observation to a theory. And even a theory with tremendous evidence to back it up can be usurped by a better hypothesis that graduates to a new theory that replaces it. Like Newtonian physics replaced in many respects by quantum physics. Doesn't mean Newtonian physics is wrong, just mean it's an inferior and less specific model of what's going on. So questioning science is literally built the fuck into science. Christianity is literally the thing that you can't question. Like, you see how I always love when religious people do this. They bring up, I am religious. I have this belief system. But you know what? My opponent is also religious. And then they criticize religion like they're not even allowed to question. It's like, actually, they are. Because science isn't a religion. It's science. And you are allowed to question it. But your questions have to make sense. What you're not allowed to do in science is just make it up, which is very much acceptable in religion. What you are allowed to do in science is question, which you're very much not allowed to do in religion, which, like, you say you're a Christian. Are you allowed to question the divinity of Jesus if you're a Christian? I guess maybe marginally, it depends on the denomination, but you're certainly a lot more able to question a theory in science than you are a religious doctrine. A person who believes in science can question science. A person who believes in religion is not allowed to criticize religion. So you using this idea of they can't even question as though it's a negative. Well, guess what? They can question. You know who's not allowed to question? You, as a religious person, are not allowed to question your religion according to your religion. So who's really afraid of questions?
The Jesus Christ of this is the vaccine.
That's right.
And if you question Jesus, their Jesus, then you're
a heretic.
You're a heretic. And we you know what happens?
Dude, no one is mad at anyone for questioning the vaccine, okay? Questions about the vaccine are very much welcome. False conclusions about the vaccine are what's the problem. People making shit up about the vaccine is the problem. Saying, hey, vaccines cause autism, which is a lie. You're not asking the question, like, is there a link between vaccines and autism that can then be investigated? You're jumping to the conclusion that vaccines do cause autism. You're jumping to the conclusion that there is some nefarious purpose or reason for the COVID-19 vaccines. And there's no evidence to support that. But it's not just a question, it's a conclusion. And it's a conclusion that's not based on empiricism. It's not based on evidence. It's not based on anything resembling a scientific process. It's just like, my gut tells me something's up here, and I got to trust my intuition.
The heretics.
They get burned at the stake.
Yeah.
So you...
Oh, yeah, okay. Well, when is your steak, what time is your steak burning then? When do we get to burn you at the stake then, Rob? They get burned at the stake. All right, well, let's go. Tell me when and where you're going to be burned at the stake, Rob. I'll show up with popcorn, okay? But guess what? You're not going to get burned at the stake, okay? You're going to be fine. You're going to go on with your middling-ass career, and Jimmy Dore is going to go on with his, I guess, slightly less middling-ass career. And that's what's going to happen. No one's going to burn either of you at the stake because you said the naughty stuff. Are some people going to rightly call you idiots? Sure. Small price to pay for, your careers, right?
You used a word there it's called scientism.
Yeah.
Right? And what that is, that turns science into religion.
Yes.
And so you're not allowed to question religion. But your science... Actually, that's how science progresses.
I love these dumbass. I love a dumbass. I don't know if Jimmy Dore is religious or not, but I love the dumbass motherfucker in the form of Rob Schneider, who's like, "I'm religious. Science is religion. Religion is bad." You don't. Wait a minute, huh? Ouroboros much?
Is by questioning the assumptions of science, and so that's what I tell people. That's why we know about the speed of light, black holes, and E equals mc squared.
All science is a series of experiments to find a regularity. That's it. So you need to keep maybe the regularity. You'll find that one, and that happens to be the current regularity. That's our theory for now.
And you're constantly
right. Our theory for now.
People are constantly questioning E equals mc squared.
Right, because that's part of science, like I just said.
Just like Einstein questioned Newton's idea of gravity, not because he was anti-science, but because that's how science works.
Right, but
that is how science works.
Also,
wait, do you guys think that's what you're doing? Because you're not scientists, you know that, right? You guys aren't scientists, and you're not questioning science. You're drawing erroneous conclusions that are anti-science. Not the same thing at all.
Einstein, it was about the perspective, and they were both right. When you're looking at that train, they're both right, depending on where you are.
Relative. That's the whole thing of relativity.
Yes, depending on where you are. So I do think that, like, where it...
I love how they run right into the point and then just brush it aside like it's just this gossamer cobweb. Like, hey, isn't that the whole point we were just arguing against? Anyway, brush that aside. It's like, you realize that you guys at the end of that segment just totally invalidated everything else you said in that segment, right? I guess you don't, because you just plowed right on forth You gotta love these guys, man. You just gotta love them. They're just so enjoyable.